Yeah. Charlie Tuna.
What up, man?
Dynamite MC, Crafty Cuts.
Yes, sir.
We return to make skin burn.
Fire.
Clock's ticking. What you gonna do with it? If every second
Okay, welcome to a new ISU podcast episode, and today is a special one. Last Friday, we had the first ever student-athlete leadership conference hosted by the American School of Vienna, and we had Ben, Maya, Oyundari, and Michelle representing ISU, and we have them today here on the podcast. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So we are here today just to talk a little bit about what happened, your presentation, and some reflection on the whole conference. So to start with, Oyundari, how did you experience the conference? First impression.
Are you talking about like the presentations I watched or the planning?
Just in general, whole
General,
conference.
I think the whole conference was very good way to increase my public speaking and also to learn about different sports leadership techniques.
Awesome. And you, Ben?
I really enjoyed it. I think that the two guest speakers were the parts that I enjoyed the most, Sebastian Bellen and Dr. Dale, because just what they brought to the table, what they expressed, and all of the things that they had both experienced. I found it really interesting in the way that they talked about all of that too.
Okay, we're going back to those guest speakers because they were awesome. Maya, what was your overall impression?
Yeah, I agree with Ben. I think the best part of the conference was the two guest speakers. They brought up a lot of points that really resonated with me, and I think I want to act upon those things. And I really just enjoyed the process of preparing for the conference, like the weekly meetings and stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
What were the takeaways from those guest speakers then? Because you say you're going to act upon them. So can you tell me a little bit more about
that? From the first guest speaker, what was his name? Sebastian Bauer?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the main thing that he said was, if you're in a room and you're the smartest person in that room, then you need to change rooms. Like, I never really thought about it like that.
And yeah, because you never.
I think just like, yeah, like I've always been told, like the quote, you're the average of the 10 people you spend the most time around, but I never thought like, oh, I need to surround myself with these good people. Like that really just like kind of added on top of that quote, and now I just really want to make sure that I'm spending time with smart people,
That's great, yeah, that's brilliant. It's a great quote. I've never been in that position though.
To go on to the first guest speaker, Sebastian Bellen. So he was a professional basketball player for years in Europe. Came through the international school circuit, and he survived a bombing in Belgium a few years ago, terrorist attack. So Ben, what was your takeaway from the first guest speaker?
Well, I mean, what Maya said, like my dad's been telling me my entire life, surround yourself by people who challenge you and not people that rely on you, I guess. And that was part of the takeaway, but also just like there's a big difference between want and need. And if you really need something, then you need to work as hard as you can for it. You can't put you can't put an exact number on how much you need something. You can on how much you want something. So if you need something, then you need to do everything you can to get it.
Awesome. Yeah, he was talking about the quality and quantity part, right?
Yeah.
Wake up every day, and he asked his kids about quality or quantity. Oyundari, what did you take away from the first speaker?
From the first speaker, he talked about like when he got bombed and when he was laying there, like every time someone passed by him, that like he didn't really ask for like help, but he asked for something. So like, I mean, I guess like I thought that if you need help with something, you shouldn't be like, oh, help me, but instead you should like have an action plan to act upon in order to achieve the thing that you need help with.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome, guys. Yeah, the first guest speaker was very interesting. He had no PowerPoint. He was just talking into the camera. He was very into it, right? And I love the attention he did to the whole presentation. Great story. I'm happy you took some away from that. Now we're going into the rest of the conference, and I want to talk now more about your presentation. And we will finish with Dr. Dale from Duke University at the end. So guys, you did the presentation. Let's start with Oyundari. Can you talk briefly what your presentation was about?
So in general, our presentation was about Chinggis Khan's leadership and how that plays a part on student leadership. And we also included things like Natam and like the significance of Mongolian culture.
Okay. Do you, Ben, can you explain the whole process? Did you enjoy the process, and what were some of the difficulties of the whole process?
Well, originally I didn't enjoy it too much because we were given the hard deadline to make sure that we had our part done. And then I found myself the day before thinking, oh, I've still got to make that. So I just kind of threw together whatever I could. I thought it was absolute nonsense, but it ended up being pretty much what I ended up presenting. So, but I did really enjoy the process. It was a lot of refining and figuring out exactly what I wanted to say. And just, I think we can all be really proud of the product that we ended up producing. And I really thoroughly enjoyed the process.
On
And
the
what about you? Sorry, Nick. Go.
Sorry, on the day itself, because I played devil's advocate with you guys, saying about Chinggis Khan, about I actually believed he led by fear alone. Obviously, I was playing kind of devil's advocate. Did you have any tricky questions regarding that and the actual the event itself?
Well, actually, I
after
like
the presentation,
Maya, go. And then Ben, you can follow up on that, okay? Doesn't matter. Maya, go.
we basically only had one question after, and it was about Chinggis Khan. So I think it was good to prepare us for that.
How did you handle it? What did you actually say? Did all three of you say respond to that, or just one of you?
Oh, we basically said what we said when we practiced. We were like, oh, we know Chinggis Khan has done good and bad things, but I think if we focus on the good, we can learn lots of lessons other than just focusing on the bad things. Not saying we should ignore them though.
Yeah. No, so you answered very well. Yeah, good.
Yeah, and what I really enjoyed about that, because I knew the question was coming, right? That's just an obvious one. There were not many questions after your presentation, which was great, guys, because you made a big impression on everyone, I think. And Ben, you were talking about, as the only non-Mongolian, about your experiences. Can you a little bit talk about that? What was your answer on that? Because I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I just talked about how much of a shock it was when I didn't know enough about Chinggis Khan when I came here to have any of the solidified ideas of exactly what he did in his time. However, my dad made me watch some documentaries and stuff, so I knew a fair bit, and I knew that he had some questionable practices. So, but when I came here, I just saw how much he was respected. You know, there's big pictures of him on mountains, and there's a big monument of him right outside my building, and everybody just has so much respect for him. And I just kind of was talking about how it made me realize how much patriotism and people's love of their culture and history can really not necessarily warp, but change their perspective on things and people. Yeah.
So, Oyundari, sorry, I'll go and then someone go after that. Oyundari, what I really enjoyed about your presentation was and I hope you agree on that, it was the passion and was the kind of culture you guys put forward. Do you think that you realized the goal? Did you get across what you guys wanted to get across in your presentations?
I think that we were able to get across what we want in our presentation. I think like for my part, it was mostly about the 4 lessons, and I made that very clear when I talked about it, or at least I think so. And Maya and Michelle, I think they really showed the Mongolian culture of Chinggis Khan and Mongolia, and Ben with how leadership is important in sports. So I think we nailed down all the things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and I think one of the trickiest parts was trying to connect all the ideas, because we wanted to like bring in culture and leadership and somehow make a presentation out of that. We wanted to include Natham as well. So I think we managed to connect it by using like Mongolian wrestlers' books and how they got to positions of power, and then saying that Chinggis Khan created the festival. That was one of his many feats as a leader, and then using his lessons and then tying that back to Ben's ideas. I think it really worked.
Did you have a question,
Definitely.
Mr. Lillis? Go.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to agree. Like, I think so too. Like, you really, although you say you struggled with trying to come up with that connection, I think it really helped solidify your presentation and maybe make it unique compared to some of the other student presentations, at least the ones I saw. So I'm not sure then, what do you think? Like, comparing yours to some of the other ones that you maybe looked at, then how do you think you did? Were you as prepared as you needed to be? Were you, again, happy with what you had done?
For me, I can't really picture what it would have been like to be a person in the audience for our presentation.
Yeah.
But I do know that the presentations I saw weren't exactly engaging, I'd say. I think for the most part they were interesting, but it was just really stale, I guess. So I think the fact that we brought in different elements and components to it, and we had it multiple different presenters talking about multiple different parts of all of it, and we managed to connect it all together, I think that made it probably more enjoyable than some of the ones that I saw personally.
Were there any standouts, guys, in terms of the presentations? Were there any that weren't stale, that you thought, oh, that's very interesting, I learned a lot from that?
One of the 2 I saw was pretty good, and she was talking about, I think Maya, it was the one you were in with me.
Creating a successful team.
Yeah, that's what it was. She just kind of talked about how important it is to like recognize the human component of your teammates and like be friends with them, not just teammates. And she used a lot of statistics, so I enjoyed it more. But like, I think it was a good presentation, definitely. But the other one I went to really was,
her presentation was really well put together. It was like really neat, and she like talked like at a really good pace, and it was really interesting to watch. And like she made sure to keep her points up and to make sure we knew exactly what she was talking about. So I really enjoyed that presentation. But like Ben said, the other one I went to was just really stale, and I didn't like it.
Oyundari, we were in the first session. This girl from the Vienna American School, remember that? She was talking about the stress and how to visualize. And did you enjoy her presentation?
Yeah, her presentation on competition anxiety. That's like one of the things I struggle with for a game. And then like the different methods she gave of approaching it, like creating a routine that you follow every time, or speaking positively to yourself and visualizing yourself actually doing the things, I think were really good points. And she was quite engaging when she spoke. It wasn't like you didn't really dread to listen to her, and I think it was very useful to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, guys, the main difference is that you and this girl from Vienna American School, they share a story. they share a passion, and they don't talk too much about themselves. I think that's the main difference here. If someone's continued to talk about themselves over and over and over, and I had another session, people check out a little bit. And you guys were very compact. Now, a different level of difficulties. You were with 4 people instead of 1. How did that work? Ben, can you talk a little bit about that whole process of you guys working as a team together?
I actually think it worked really well because it started out like it's like if you're building something and you cut out the individual pieces and then you glue it together. So when we started out, it was Oyundari doing her part, Maya and Michelle doing their part, and me doing my part. And then we had the practice, we realized what needed to be done, and we started to like connect it all back, fine-tune the presentation itself. And I think it was a challenge, but I really enjoyed it. And I think it was a big benefit for all of us. And it helped our presentation a lot because it allowed us to cover a lot of ground without as much like time, and made it less boring. I think.
Yeah, at one point we like switched the whole routine. Not what is it called? Order
Yeah.
of our presentation. It was supposed to be me and Michelle first. Yeah, it was supposed to be me and Michelle first, but then we ended up putting Oyundari first because, and I think that turned out really well. I think having like a lot of practice sessions and editing small details every time really helped. And I felt like in the actual presentation, like I wasn't nervous at all because I knew exactly what I needed to say. Like I already practiced presenting it, and when we had a practice run with the teachers, like I already felt the nerves. And if I could present to teachers, like what's a couple students gonna do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How did it change the dynamics, changing the order? Why did that work better?
Well, it was more about topic. So instead of talking about Natham and then Chinggis Khan and then leadership, which sorry, it kind of just automatically disjointed the entire presentation.
Yeah.
There wasn't a flow to it. It was like there was one part and then 2 connected parts. And instead, this allowed us to go from Chinggis Khan to Natham and how that connected, and then how it all connected back to the 3rd topic. And I think it just made it flow a lot better.
And our topic,
Go Maya.
our topic is Chinggis Khan, is like affects on student leadership. So I feel like if we started out with something that isn't Chinggis Khan, like the viewers would be confused. They'd be like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for. Like this isn't what I'm watching the presentation for.
That's a good point. And maybe we should kind of clarify as well, I guess, that there were only 3 sessions.
Yeah.
So obviously we were all in that session. So the students only got to pick 2 others. And there were lots of good choices. So again, hopefully you go back and look at some of the ones you missed. I know I want to see some of the ones that I missed as well.
Definitely. So guys, to wrap up your presentation, we had a lot of meetings, and I remember that I pitched this idea back in end October, and we had a lot of meetings. And at one point, were you actually like I'm actually sad that I signed up for this, because we pushed you pretty hard to get the presentation done on time. Ben, was there a moment where you were almost done with it or not?
I'd say for the first half of us working on it, probably every second of every day. But it wasn't necessarily because I didn't want to be working on the presentation. I just swamped myself with work through procrastination. So it was just another thing that I had to get done. So I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
But at the end, are you happy with the Are you happy that you've been pushed to get this done, that you were part of it?
Absolutely. I think had we not been, it would have been a far more lackluster presentation.
Awesome. What about you, Oyundari?
Yeah.
Oyundari, what about you?
Like, I remember when I first came up with my script and the presentation slides, I thought it was going to be perfect. Like, there wouldn't be any editing that I need to do. But then, like, as I presented, so many flaws came out, and I'm so glad that, like, we had all those sessions to point it out so I could fix it. Yeah.
And it's hard, eh? So every session you think you got it, and then we come with tons of feedback on how to improve on that. But that's something you got to learn. That's resilience, guys, and you did a great job on that. Just to take it in, because it sets you guys apart from the rest with your presentation. It was absolutely amazing to watch it. It was very smooth to follow that. So thank you for that again. We're going to continue to the final guest speaker. Mr. Dale, Dr. Greg Dale from Duke University. Let's start with Oyundari. Can you give me, what was your first impression of his presentation and some takeaway from his presentation?
Well, like already hearing that he's from Duke University, I knew he was like a pretty smart guy, and like that he had something really interesting to say. And like during his presentation, he's like, in a team, you should have the dynamic in which someone who's like, I guess, from a lower grade can come up to like older person and be like, hey, you're not doing your work and stuff. Like that, have that type of, how should I say, relationship where you can call each other out without like harming each other. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that should be implemented into more teams, and something I noticed myself, like I can't really call out the seniors or something when they're doing some, like when they're not working as hard, because like that's the type of dynamic that we have to fix.
Okay. What about you, Ben?
To start with, I was already really excited to see that presentation, in part because I'm confrontational and you've been talking about how great he was, and I just wanted to see if he was really as great as you were saying. And if he wasn't, then I had something to debate about, but he was. And I was also looking forward to it just because, you know, I really love basketball. My favorite team, New Orleans Pelicans, and just so happens to be the school that the biggest prospect has come out of in the past 20 years since LeBron James. So I was very excited to hear a speaker from Duke. And I thought he brought a lot of really good points. What Oyundari talked about, where they need that dynamic, especially this year, it wasn't too bad because like the seniors this year were, how do I put this? Less egomaniacal in the nicest way possible. Yeah. So they accepted criticism and it was a much friendlier environment. But in the past, it's been like, you know, the seniors just screaming at the people younger than them, and for no reason. It happened at Aquinas last year at basketball. Like, so I think that is a really important dynamic where people are able to criticize, obviously help in a kind way, not in a way with the intention to hurt your teammate. But I think that's a really important dynamic in that there shouldn't be any sort of power play based on age. Like, you should be able to allow them to grow in the same way you do, and you want them to become better players. So if you are the oldest person on the team, you want to see the youngest people succeed. And so I think that was really interesting, and I really enjoyed his presentation.
Did he bring up the South Korean pilots? Because it can have deadly consequences, this not being able to challenge people. So did he bring up that at all, the South Korean pilots? So back in the 1990s, South Korean Airlines had an incredible amount of crashes. And they realized it was because the co-pilots wouldn't challenge the pilots when the pilots were making wrong decisions. So they totally retrained the South Korean pilots and the co-pilots, so they were able to challenge the pilots when things were going wrong. And since then, their crash record has been exceptional. There hasn't been any crashes since. So that fact that you can challenge even if you're younger is absolutely crucial if something's going to work right. Sorry, Maya.
Yeah, no, Maya, what was your takeaway? Did you have something else to add to that?
I think my main takeaway from it was there's a difference between doing what's best for your team and being liked by your team, and sometimes you have to play the bad guy to actually make the team better. Because like usually when you're in a sports team, like most of the players, they're your friends, they're your classmates, they're your schoolmates. Like you want to be liked by them or you're already friends with them, and it's kind of hard to stand up against them or do something they might not want to do.
Yeah, great. And I know, Mr. Lillis, we were texting about, we were very surprised by something he did. Do you remember what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that? So he's like the head of athletics at Duke University. And then he just gave you his cell phone number. Said, yeah, give me a call if you have any questions or concerns or anything you want to know. I've never seen anyone in that type of position be that open and accepting for, you know, just he's totally willing to share any bit of knowledge he knows. And he's just all about getting that message out, right? We all need to be held accountable. We're accountable to one another. We're accountable to ourselves. And if we're the best player on that team, great. But if we are not the best player on that team, we are all, you know, equal, and we all have this shared vision of all trying to grow and be better, like you said, Maya.
Definitely. So for everybody watching today, we're going to send him an email from ISU. So Ben, send me your questions, and then we'll get in contact with Dr. Dale, and then we're going to get some answers, because I've been in contact with him before. He's very quick. He was a great inspiration and great talk last Friday. Some final words. We're going to the end of our interview, guys. Let's start with Maya first, Ben and Oyu. Just to wrap it up in one sentence or a few sentences, the whole experience. Would you do it again, and why? Maya. Yeah, Maya, you're back. Go again.
I think it was like nerve-inducing, but it was like very much worth it.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that. You were great in your presentation. Very natural behind the camera. Good job. Ben.
I definitely do it again, since I know now that I'm definitely not leaving after this year, so I'll be here till I graduate. So
Awesome.
I want to be a good leader in the school, in sports, just in general. And so I enjoyed the process of doing the presentations and listening to the others present. So I think it was a really good learning process. So I definitely do it again.
Awesome. Good to hear that, Ben. Oyu.
I think going to a conference it was my first conference, and it was very interesting to see how different opinions and views, learn from it, and also preparing for a conference myself. I'm not the best public speaker, so it was good to push myself out there and learn.
Yeah, well, you talked from the heart, and I think that's the most important thing that you did. You talked about you. People always like an interesting story, and you did that. So you all made massive progress. Mr. Lillis, any final words from you about the process?
Yeah, sure. Again, it was terrific. You did an awesome job, and I was so glad that we could be a part of this. The conference was completely virtual, which allowed us, there were 100 schools there. So normally we wouldn't get an opportunity like this because the people hosting it, they were based in Europe. But the sheer fact that it was all on Zoom made it totally possible. And I don't know, again, how you totally felt about presenting, because again, you're publicly speaking, but you're on the computer screen, much like we are now. So did that have a totally different feel? Like you're presenting as 4 people, but you're not really even sure how people are viewing you. Like the viewer gets to choose their own experience. Are they seeing it like a gallery, like everyone at once? Are they seeing just you on screen? Are they seeing the other people? It was just a very kind of unique event and something really neat for you guys to take part of, I think.
Okay.
As a primary school teacher, obviously I don't get to see you guys that often, but it really surprised me, your confidence, actually. I think you underestimate yourself, Oyundari. I think you're absolutely superb public speaker, and that goes for all of you as well. I mean, I just think about my kids, and you're not that far off them, and how you have progressed in that short time from the ages of 10 years of age. Absolutely fantastic. I was really surprised how good you were. I think you were absolutely brilliant.
So good job, everyone. Okay. Hey, thank you all for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the whole process and to be on the podcast today. That's it for us. So, guys, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again for
Thank
having
you
me.
guys.
Thank
Have a
you
nice
for
day.
having us. Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice
So, thank you everyone for watching another episode of the ISU podcast. And we're going to say goodbye. Mr. Deers?
No, wonderful. Thanks for watching. As always, take care, everyone.
Yeah. So, take care. And if you want to be involved in the ISU podcast, please contact us. We're looking for students to be involved, teachers to be involved, anybody in the ISU community. So if you want to be involved, just give us an email or a ring, and we'll hope to see you soon on our podcast or maybe behind the camera.
Yep. All positions are available. We'll take anyone. Thank you so much for watching.